My family excluded me from the Christmas trip to Hawaii at my sister's request, so I kicked her and her husband out of my house, where they were living rent-free, and ignored my parents' phone calls. Now they're begging me. It was a warm July afternoon when I drove to my parents' house for summer break after 3 years of college. These visits had fallen into a predictable pattern. Mom's overly enthusiastic hugs, Dad's awkward pats on the back, and the endless questions about my studies that never quite managed to hide their disinterest. "Louisa, honey," Mom called from the porch. "You're just in time for dinner. And guess who's coming?" I didn't need to guess. Jennifer, my older sister, and her husband Marco had made it a habit to show up whenever I was home, as if they needed to remind everyone of their success story. Sure enough, 2 hours later, we were all seated around the dining room table. Mom had taken out her special occasion tablecloth, the one with the delicate lace trim that only saw the light of day when Jennifer visited. "So," Jennifer announced, setting down her fork with that theatrical flair of hers, "Marco and I have big news." Everyone held their breath as my sister took one of her typical dramatic pauses. At 32, Jennifer had always been the family favorite, the perfect daughter with the perfect job in digital marketing, the perfect husband who was an accountant, and the perfect life she never failed to flaunt at every family gathering we attended. "We both got promoted," she exclaimed, glancing sideways at me to make sure I was paying attention to the new chapter of her apparent superiority. "And to celebrate, we're planning a family Christmas trip to Hawaii. All expenses paid by us." My parents erupted in applause and congratulations, as if they had just announced the cure for some serious disease instead of a simple vacation. "Hawaii!" Mom exclaimed. "I've always dreamed of going there for Christmas." "It's the least we can do," Marco said with that condescending smile that always made me grind my teeth, "especially since you've let us live in Luisa's house for the last year." Ah, yes, that little detail, the house I had bought with my inheritance from Grandma 2 years ago. The same house where Jennifer and Marco were living without paying a single cent in rent while they saved for their future. A future that apparently included trips to Hawaii, but not paying for their own roof. "So when is this big trip?" I asked, trying to sound enthusiastic despite the sibling conflict that had been brewing for years. Jennifer exchanged an awkward glance with my parents before answering. "We leave on December 22nd and come back on January 2nd. We've already booked everything." "Sounds perfect," I said, mentally calculating the vacation days I'd need to request from my part-time job. "I'll have to arrange a few things with my boss, but I should be able to." "Actually, Louisa," Mom interrupted, her voice suddenly very interested in the tablecloth's design, "we thought maybe you'd prefer to stay and look after the house." "What?" The word came out louder than I intended. "What Mom means," Jennifer interjected with that condescending tone she reserved exclusively for me, "is that this trip is more for adults, established people." "I'm 25, Jennifer. I've been a legal adult for a while." "Yes, but it's not the same," she insisted. "We have established careers, a stable marriage. You're still finding yourself." The silence that followed was so awkward you could almost cut it with a knife. My father, always avoiding the financial consequences of any confrontation, finally spoke up. "Besides, someone has to stay to look after the house and feed the cat." "We don't have a cat," I replied dryly. "Well, you could get one," Jennifer suggested with a little laugh, "to keep you company for Christmas." I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something to defend me, but their eyes were fixed on their plates, avoiding any eye contact. The family exclusion was complete and official. "I see," I finally said, placing my napkin on the table with a calmness I didn't feel at all. "The trip is for the real family, and I'm just the owner of the house where they live rent-free." Jennifer had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Louisa. We just thought it would be better this way. You'll have other opportunities to travel." What they didn't know was that this dinner had just triggered a turning point in our relationship. As we finished dessert in an uncomfortable silence, I made a decision. If I wasn't enough of a family member to be included on a Christmas trip, then they weren't enough of a family to continue living in my house. I smiled cordially and asked about the cake. Sometimes the best revenge is a dish served cold, especially when it involves financial consequences and sibling conflicts. The next day, I woke up to a text from Jennifer. "Could you water the plants while we're in Hawaii? Thanks, little sis." Not an apology, not an explanation. As if the family exclusion from the night before was perfectly normal. During breakfast, my parents acted as if nothing had happened. Mom was making pancakes while humming Christmas carols in the middle of July, already fantasizing about her trip to Hawaii. Dad was reading the newspaper, occasionally commenting on the activities they planned to do. The snorkeling in Maui is supposedly incredible, he commented without looking up. And Jennifer says the hotel has direct access to the beach. Sounds wonderful, I replied with a tight smile. By the way, how much are Jennifer and Marco paying to live in my house? The newspaper slowly lowered. Louisa, we've already talked about this. They're saving for their future. A future that includes a trip to Hawaii for the whole family. Except for me. Mom loudly dropped a plate of pancakes in front of me. Don't start with that again. Jennifer worked very hard to be able to pay for this trip. And I don't work hard? Or does my job while I'm studying not count as a real job? It's different, Mom insisted. Jennifer has an established career, responsibilities. And I don't have responsibilities? I interrupted, feeling the sibling conflict intensifying inside me. How about letting them live in my house rent-free? Isn't that a responsibility? Lower your voice, Mom hissed, looking nervously towards the stairs. They're going to hear you. And there it was. The real concern wasn't hurting my feelings, but inconveniencing Jennifer and Marco. The financial consequences of my decisions had always benefited my sister, while hers never seemed to affect anyone but me. That afternoon, while everyone else went out to buy new luggage for the trip, I stayed at the house looking over some documents. Curiosity led me to my dad's study, where I found invoices for the Hawaii trip. To my surprise, I discovered they had booked 4 rooms at the resort. 1 for my parents, 1 for Jennifer and Marco, a 3rd for Marco's parents, and the 4th for Marco's brother and his girlfriend. Marco's brother, whom I barely knew, had been invited, while I, the daughter and sister, had been excluded. The family exclusion hadn't been due to a lack of space or budget, but a deliberate choice. When they returned from their shopping, Jennifer came into my room without knocking, as she always did. I need to ask you a favor, she announced, dropping several bags from exclusive stores onto my bed. Could you go over this list of things we need you to do while we're away? She handed me a paper with a detailed list. Water specific plants on specific days, collect the mail, clean the pool, check the alarms, tasks they could have easily hired someone to do. But why pay when they could take advantage of me? And what do I get in return? I asked, surprising myself with my own audacity. Jennifer blinked, genuinely confused. Excuse me. I'm asking what I get in return for taking care of your house while you're on vacation. It's your house too, she replied, though we both knew she never treated it as such. It is? Because a moment ago you referred to it as our house. But when you need something, suddenly it's my house too. Jennifer sighed dramatically. Let's not start with this, Louisa. It's already awkward enough having to ask you to stay behind. Ask me? You never asked me. You informed me I wasn't invited. Look, she said, using the tone one would use with a difficult child. Marco and I paid for this trip. We have the right to decide who comes. And I pay for this house. I have the right to decide who lives here. A tense silence settled between us. For the first time, I saw a flicker of worry in Jennifer's eyes. The financial consequences of her actions were beginning to become apparent. You wouldn't do that, she finally said. We're family. Exactly, we're family. And yet, you exclude me from a family trip to invite Marco's brother, who doesn't even share our blood. David is practically family, Jennifer insisted. And he and Marco are inseparable. How convenient that your definition of family is so flexible. Jennifer picked up her bags with jerky movements. I'll talk to Mom and Dad about this. You're being completely irrational. After she left, I reviewed my property deed and the terms of the verbal agreement I had made with Jennifer and Marco when they temporarily moved in a year ago. There was nothing formal, no lease agreement, just a sisterly agreement that Jennifer had exploited in her favor from the beginning. That night at dinner, Jennifer had orchestrated a united front against me. My parents looked uncomfortable but determined to support her. Louisa, Dad began in his business voice, Jennifer told us about your conversation. I think you're being a little unfair. Unfair. I repeated, incredulous. I'm unfair for feeling left out of a family trip while strangers are invited? Marco's parents and brother are not strangers, Mom intervened. They're family now. And what am I? An uncomfortable silence followed my question. Marco finally spoke, his voice carefully modulated. Louisa, we really appreciate you letting us live here while we save. But this trip is something Jennifer and I wanted to do for our parents. And honestly, it would be a little tense if you came. Tense? Why would it be tense? Jennifer cut in before Marco could answer. Because you're always competing with me, Louisa. Always trying to prove something. Honestly, I don't want to spend my vacation dealing with your insecurity and your jealousy. Her words hit me like a slap. For years I had endured her put-downs, her little humiliations, her constant need to feel superior. And now, not only was she excluding me from a family trip, but she was accusing me of being the problematic one. I understand, I said, getting up from the table. I finally understand perfectly. Where are you going? Mom asked, alarmed by my sudden calm. To my room. I have to make some calls. As I walked up the stairs, I heard Jennifer say, "See? She always has to make a drama. This is why we didn't invite her." In my room, I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, the same one who had helped me with the house purchase. I explained the situation and asked him to prepare a formal document. If Jennifer wanted to play at family exclusion, I was ready to teach her the true meaning of financial consequences. How long do you need to prepare an eviction notice? I asked. The answer was music to my ears. I can have it ready by tomorrow morning. The next morning arrived with an apparent calm. I had breakfast alone as the rest of the family had left early to, according to the note on the fridge, finalize trip details. The family exclusion continued even in the preparations. At noon the doorbell rang. It was Miguel, my lawyer, with a manila envelope in his hand. Here you go, Louisa. Everything is in order, he said, handing me the document. They have 30 days from the official notification. Considering there's no formal lease and the property is exclusively yours, they are living here on your goodwill, which you can revoke at any time. I reviewed the papers while Miguel explained the legal details. The eviction notice was perfectly drafted, formal, legal, and irrefutable. The financial consequences for Jennifer and Marco would be significant. They would have to find a new place to live within a month, just as they were spending thousands of dollars on a trip to Hawaii. Are you sure you want to do this? Miguel asked before he left. It's your family after all. They made their decision, I replied with a calmness I didn't feel. Now I'm making mine. I spent the rest of the afternoon organizing my room and packing a few things. I had decided to return to my apartment near the university that same night, after delivering the notice. I didn't want to be present for the drama that would surely follow. Around 6 p.m., I heard my parents' car in the driveway. I took a deep breath and went downstairs with the envelope in my hand, prepared for the sibling conflict that was about to reach its critical point. I found everyone in the living room, laughing and chatting animatedly. They stopped abruptly when I walked in. "Oh, Louisa," Mom said with false cheer. "We were just about to order pizza. Want to join us?" "Actually, I have something for you," I said, extending the envelope toward Jennifer and Marco. Jennifer looked at it suspiciously. "What's this?" "A farewell gift." Her tone was mocking. "Something like that," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It's a formal eviction notice. You have 30 days to find another place to live." The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Jennifer took the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out the documents. Marco leaned over to read over her shoulder, his face visibly paling. This is a joke, right?" Jennifer stammered. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Jennifer turned to our parents, who seemed frozen in their seats. "Say something to her. She can't do this." "Actually, I can," I intervened. "It's my house. You don't have a lease. You've been living here out of my generosity, a generosity you clearly don't value. This is about the trip," Jennifer yelled, standing up. "You're being completely childish." "No, Jennifer. I'm being an adult just like you always claim to be. I'm making decisions based on what's best for me, just like you always do." Marco finally spoke, his voice tense with barely contained panic. Louisa, please be reasonable. We can't find a place in 30 days, and we just spent a lot of money on this trip. You should have thought of that before you excluded me from a family trip to invite a brother I barely know, I responded without yielding. The financial consequences of your decisions are not my problem. My father then stood up, his face red with either anger or shame, I wasn't sure. Louisa, take this back immediately. You can't throw your own sister out on the street. I'm not throwing her out on the street, Dad. I'm giving her 30 days, which is more than the law requires. And by the way, she threw me out of a family trip without blinking. It's not the same, Mom interjected, her voice sharp with anxiety. It's just a trip. And this is just a house, I retorted. My house that I bought with my money, where you've been living for free while saving for trips to Hawaii that you don't even have the decency to include me in. Jennifer burst into theatrical tears, something that had always worked to manipulate our parents. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm your sister. How convenient that you remember we're sisters now, I said, surprised by my own firmness. Yesterday I was too tense to go to Hawaii with you, but today you expect me to let you live in my house indefinitely. Marco tried a more pragmatic approach. We can pay you rent. We should have from the beginning. It's too late for that, I replied. I've already made my decision. Just like you made yours by excluding me. Jennifer stopped crying instantly, her face transforming into a mask of fury. You're so selfish. You've always been jealous of my success, of my marriage. Jealous? I laughed, though without humor. Jennifer, you're living in my house because you can't afford your own. What exactly should I be jealous of? At least I have a family that loves me, she screamed, a low blow even for her. Apparently not, I responded, picking up my purse and car keys, because that same family excluded me from their vacation without a second thought. My father tried to step between us. Louisa, you can't just leave like this. We have to resolve this. It is resolved, Dad. The eviction notice is legal and binding. If you try to stay beyond the 30 days, I will take legal action. Are you threatening us? Mom asked, horrified. No, I'm informing you of my rights as a homeowner. Just like you informed me that I wasn't welcome on the family trip. Jennifer threw the papers on the floor in a fit of rage. Fine, we'll leave. But don't expect things to ever be the same between us. I never expected them to be, I replied calmly. In fact, I hope they'll be better, with clear boundaries and mutual respect, something that has clearly been lacking until now. I grabbed my suitcase, which I had strategically left by the door, and headed for the exit. Where are you going? My mother asked, her voice cracking with a mix of anger and concern. To my apartment. I'll be back to make sure you comply with the eviction deadline. As I walked to my car, I heard Jennifer shout from the doorway. You'll regret this, Louisa. You can't treat your family like this. I started the engine and rolled down the window to answer her one last time. That's what I thought when you decided to exclude me from Hawaii. And with that, I drove away, leaving behind the chaos I had unleashed and feeling, for the first time in a long time, that I had reclaimed control of my life and my dignity. The drive to my apartment was surreal. A mix of adrenaline and anxiety kept me alert as the reality of what I had just done settled in. I had stood up to my family, especially Jennifer, and I had set a firm boundary. The financial consequences for them would be considerable, but I no longer felt responsible for solving their problems. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications, missed calls from my parents, furious text messages from Jennifer, and even a surprisingly formal email from Marco requesting a meeting to discuss alternative terms. I ignored every single one of them. Instead of responding, I contacted Miguel to inform him about the delivery of the notice and asked him to handle any legal communication from now on. The sibling conflict had reached a point of no return, and I needed emotional distance. They've been calling, Miguel informed me 3 days later. Your father tried to argue that there's a verbal agreement allowing them to stay indefinitely. I explained that even if such an agreement existed, which they can't prove, the law favors the homeowner in these circumstances. What did they say to that? I asked, imagining Jennifer's outrage. Your brother-in-law seemed to understand. Your sister, well, she threatened a lawsuit for emotional distress. I couldn't help but laugh. Typical Jennifer. Does she have any grounds? Absolutely none, Miguel confirmed. It's just a tactic to scare you. A week after the confrontation, I received an unexpected message from Charlotte, Jennifer's best friend from college. We had never been close, but she had always been kind to me. Luisa, I know it's not my place, but I think you should know what's going on. Jennifer has been spreading a very distorted version of events among friends and family. She says you're kicking her out for pure spite, and that you've always tried to sabotage her happiness out of jealousy. Many people believe her, but I know you well enough to doubt her version. I just wanted to warn you. The family exclusion was now extending to wider social circles. Jennifer was doing what she always did, manipulating the narrative to play the victim. I decided it was time to take additional measures. That afternoon, I drafted a detailed email and sent it to key members of our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and some close family friends. It wasn't my style to air dirty laundry in public, but I wasn't going to let Jennifer destroy my reputation with lies either. In the email, I calmly explained the situation, how I had bought the house with my inheritance, how Jennifer and Marco had been living there rent-free for over a year, how they had organized a family trip deliberately excluding me to invite others, and finally, how I had decided to exercise my rights as a homeowner after this latest slight. I'm not looking for anyone to take sides, I concluded in the email. I just want you to know all the facts before forming an opinion. This situation is painful for everyone involved, but I firmly believe that setting healthy boundaries is necessary for functional family relationships. The response was immediate and surprising. My Aunt Elena, my mother's sister and always close to Jennifer, was the first to reply. Dear Luisa, I had no idea the situation was like this. Your mother told me a very different version. I appreciate your honesty and I think you've shown admirable patience until now. I'm always here if you need to talk. Other relatives responded similarly, many expressing surprise at the generosity I had shown by allowing Jennifer and Marco to live in my house without compensation. 2 weeks after the eviction notice, my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment. I didn't invite them in, opting to speak in the hallway. Luisa, this has gone too far, Dad began, his voice softer than I expected. Jennifer and Marco are truly desperate. They can't find a suitable place in such a short time, especially with the Hawaii trip already paid for. They could cancel the trip, I suggested. Use that money for a deposit on an apartment. They can't do that, Mom exclaimed. They'd lose thousands of dollars. The financial consequences of their decisions are not my problem. I repeated the phrase that had become my mantra. They chose to spend on a trip instead of securing their housing. That was their adult decision. Is there no way you'll reconsider? Dad asked. Maybe extend the deadline until after the trip? Why should I do them that favor when they didn't hesitate to exclude me? Mom started to cry, a spectacle that previously would have made me cave. I don't recognize who you've become, Luisa. You're so cold, so calculating. No, Mom. I'm finally valuing myself. There's a big difference. What happened to the sweet girl who always put others first? She insisted between sobs. That girl got tired of being the only one giving without receiving anything in return, I replied with a calm that surprised even myself. That girl grew up and learned that respect isn't begged for. It's demanded. After they left with promises that this wasn't over, I received a message from Marco. Unlike the previous ones, this one was surprisingly sincere. Luisa, I understand why you're doing this, and believe it or not, I respect your decision. We should have handled the trip differently. Jennifer is very upset, but I'm looking at housing options. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in this family sees you as the villain of the story. His message gave me pause. Perhaps I had judged Marco unfairly, lumping him in with Jennifer in my mind. I replied briefly, Thank you for understanding, Marco. I wish you luck finding a new place. On the 25th day of the eviction notice, Jennifer finally contacted me directly, not with a call or a text, but by showing up at my apartment door with swollen eyes and an expression I had never seen on her before, defeat. Can I come in? She asked, her voice devoid of its usual confidence. I hesitated, but finally stepped aside to let her in. She sat on my sofa, looking nervously around the small but tidy space. Nice place, she commented, A transparent attempt to soften the mood. What do you want, Jennifer? I asked, remaining on my feet. I wasn't ready to let my guard down. Marco and I are separating, she said abruptly. Of all the things I expected her to say, that wasn't on the list. What? This whole situation has brought to light problems we had been ignoring. He thinks I'm selfish and manipulative. He says the way I treated you was the last straw. A single tear rolled down her cheek. He canceled the Hawaii trip. Returned the tickets. He says he doesn't want to be part of a family that treats its members like that. I slowly sat down across from her, processing this unexpected information. The consequences of my decisive action had been more profound than I had imagined. I'm sorry about your marriage, I said finally, and I meant it. Despite everything, I had never wished for the destruction of her relationship. You're sorry, she laughed humorlessly. You caused this. And there she was again. The Jennifer I knew, unable to take responsibility for her own actions. No, Jennifer. You and Marco made your own decisions just like I made mine. If your marriage couldn't withstand a conflict, maybe it wasn't as solid as you thought. She looked at me with a mixture of rage and desperation. What do you want from me, Louisa? An apology? You want me to grovel? To admit you were right. I want respect, I replied simply. The same respect I've always given you, even though you've rarely returned it. The eviction deadline came and went. Contrary to their initial threats, Jennifer and Marco vacated my house 2 days before the deadline. Miguel informed me they had left the keys at his office along with a formal letter acknowledging they had voluntarily vacated the property. When I went to inspect the house, I was surprised to find it in perfect condition. I had expected some kind of petty revenge, damaged walls, missing items, or at least a deliberate mess. Instead, everything was clean and organized. The only evidence of their departure was a note on the kitchen counter written in Marco's unmistakable handwriting. Louisa, thank you for letting us live here this past year. We're sorry for how things ended. The bills are paid through the end of the month. Marco. There was no signature from Jennifer, which didn't surprise me. The financial consequences of the eviction continued to unfold in unexpected ways. 3 days after confirming the house was empty, I received a call from my uncle Roberto, Dad's older brother, and the director of an investment firm. Louisa, do you have a moment to talk? His tone was professional but warm. Of course, uncle. What's up? I've been following the situation with Jennifer and your house. I must say you handled everything with impressive maturity. It made me realize I've never taken you seriously enough as a professional. He paused as if organizing his thoughts. We have an open position in our financial analysis department. With your background and what you've demonstrated in this situation, I think you'd be perfect for the role. It's well paid and would allow you to finish your studies with a flexible schedule. Would you be interested? I was speechless for a moment. Roberto had never shown interest in my career before, always focusing his attention on Jennifer, whom he considered the serious professional of the family. Of course I'm interested, I replied when I found my voice. I'd love to hear more details. Excellent. Can we meet tomorrow in my office? As I processed this unexpected opportunity, another consequence of the sibling conflict was unfolding on social media. Jennifer, always active on Instagram and Facebook, had been surprisingly silent since the eviction. Her silence ended with a post that left me dumbfounded. Sometimes life teaches you hard lessons about the value of family and the consequences of our actions. I've learned the hard way that treating those who love you poorly comes with a price. I'm working on being a better person and repairing the bridges I've burned. Growing and learning reflections, the family exclusion I had been subjected to had now turned into her own social exclusion, judging by the comments. It's about time you acknowledged your mistakes. I always thought how you treated your sister was unfair. Karma exists, Jennifer. The following week, my parents finally broke their silence with a joint text message. Louisa, we'd like to meet with you to talk. Please let us know when you'd be available. We love you. I agreed to meet them at a neutral coffee shop, not yet ready for the intimacy of a meeting at either of our homes. When I arrived, they were already sitting at a secluded table. Mom's eyes were red as if she had been crying, and Dad seemed to have aged years in just 1 month. Thank you for coming, Dad began after we ordered coffee. "We know you didn't have to." "I'm listening," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Mom took a breath. "First, we want to apologize. The way we handled the Hawaii trip was completely inappropriate. We should have never excluded you, let alone allowed Jennifer to make that decision for us. We got carried away by her enthusiasm," Dad continued. "She's always been persuasive, but that's no excuse. We should have defended you." "And about the eviction," Mom added, "although it took us by surprise, we now understand you had every right to do it. It was your property from the start, and Jennifer and Marco abused your generosity." Their words seemed sincere, but I still felt a resistance to fully accepting them. Too many times in the past, they had made promises of change that didn't last more than a week. "We appreciate that you were so firm," Dad continued, surprising me. "This situation has made all of us reflect on how we've treated you over the years. And what conclusions have you drawn from that reflection?" I asked, genuinely curious. My parents exchanged an awkward look before Mom answered. "That we've always taken you for granted. That we've allowed Jennifer to overshadow you and treat you as less, when in reality, you've proven to be much more responsible and considerate. The Hawaii trip is officially canceled," Dad added. "Marco returned the tickets and got a partial refund. Frankly, we no longer had the heart to go after everything that happened." I took a sip of my coffee, processing their words. "And how is Jennifer with all of this?" Another awkward look between them. "Jennifer and Marco are temporarily separated," Mom explained cautiously. "He's staying with his parents and she moved into a very small apartment. It's all she can afford now. The financial consequences of my actions had deeply affected my sister's life. A part of me felt a certain satisfaction, but another part was genuinely concerned for her. We didn't want to tell you this over the phone," Dad continued, "but some truths have come out that we think you should know." "What kind of truths?" I asked, suddenly alert. "When Jennifer and Marco started packing their things, we found documents in their room," Dad explained slowly. "Apparently, they were living in your house not because they couldn't afford another place, but because they were saving to buy an investment property in Miami." "An investment property?" I repeated, incredulous. "A beachfront condo," Mom confirmed. "They had already put down a considerable deposit. The money they saved by not paying rent was going directly into that fund." The revelation left me speechless for a moment. All this time, while I was worried about helping them, they had been hoarding money for a luxury investment. "That's not all," Dad continued, his voice now tense. "The Hawaii trip. Jennifer told us she and Marco would pay for everything, but we discovered they had only paid for the plane tickets. The hotel reservations were in our name, with our credit cards as a guarantee. The level of manipulation was astounding, even for Jennifer. Not only had she excluded me from the trip, but she had deceived our parents into thinking it was a gift, when in reality they would have ended up paying for most of it." "How did you find all this out?" I finally asked. "Marco told us," Mom replied. "He said he couldn't go on with the lies anymore. It seems your decisive action made him rethink many things in his marriage to Jennifer." The conversation continued for almost 2 hours. My parents updated me on all the events of the past few weeks, how the extended family had changed their perception of Jennifer after learning the truth, how some friends had distanced themselves from her upon discovering her manipulations, and how she was struggling to adapt to her new financial reality without the cushion my house provided. Before we parted, Dad asked me a question he clearly struggled to articulate. "Do you think you can ever forgive us, Louisa? Do you think our family can recover from this?" I looked at my parents. I really looked at them, seeing for the first time how vulnerable and fallible they were. They weren't the omnipotent beings I had imagined in my childhood, but imperfect people who had made mistakes. "Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight," I answered honestly, "but I think we're taking the first steps in the right direction." A week later, I received an unexpected message from Jennifer. "Can we meet? There are things I need to tell you in person." We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where I had spoken with my parents. When I arrived, Jennifer was already there, looking very different from the confident, arrogant sister I knew. Her clothes were simpler, her makeup minimal, and her posture lacked its usual confidence. "Thanks for coming," she said when I sat across from her. I wasn't sure you would. What did you want to talk about? I asked, getting straight to the point. Jennifer took a deep breath. First, I want to apologize. For everything. For excluding you from the trip, for taking advantage of your generosity, for the horrible things I said when you confronted us. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Marco left me, she said abruptly. It's not a temporary separation like I told Mom and Dad. He filed for divorce last week. I'm sorry, I said, and I was sincere. Don't be. He was right about me. I am selfish and manipulative. I always have been, especially with you. She paused to take a sip of her coffee. I think I was always jealous of you. Jealous of me? I couldn't hide my surprise. You were always the favorite, the successful one. Jennifer let out a bitter laugh. Successful in appearance, maybe. But you always had what I wanted most. Integrity, purpose, real friends who like you for who you are. Not for what they can get from you. Her words left me speechless. For years I had assumed Jennifer saw me as inferior, never as someone worthy of envy. The eviction was a reality check, she continued. Suddenly, all the people I thought admired me either disappeared or showed their true opinion of me. And the few who stayed, like Marco, finally spoke truths I had been ignoring for years. And now what? I asked, genuinely curious about her plans. Now I'm trying to rebuild my life from scratch. I found a job at a smaller marketing agency, less prestigious, but more ethical. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I always felt the need to compete with you and belittle you. And, she paused, I'm trying to accept that some consequences of my actions are permanent, like losing my marriage and possibly my sister. Her vulnerability moved me more than I expected. This was a Jennifer I had never seen before. Humble, reflective, genuine. You haven't lost me, I said finally. Our relationship needs to heal, to establish new boundaries. But you're still my sister. For the first time in our conversation, I saw hope in her eyes. Do you really think we can repair this someday? It won't be easy or quick, I answered honestly, but I think it's worth a try. It's been 6 months since I served the eviction notice that changed my family's dynamic forever. What began as a reaction to family exclusion turned into a turning point that transformed our lives in ways none of us could have predicted. My house, the one I bought with my grandmother's inheritance, now has a new purpose. After much thought, I decided not to sell it or live there permanently again. Instead, I turned it into an affordable rental property for low-income university students. The money it generates goes into a scholarship fund I established in memory of my grandmother, who always believed in the transformative power of education. Jennifer and Marco finalized their divorce 2 months ago. It was amicable, considering the circumstances. Marco found a job in another city and keeps in occasional contact with me, mainly to make sure I'm okay. Jennifer, for her part, has shown a surprising and sustained change. Therapy seems to be helping her recognize toxic patterns that went back generations in our family. A few weeks ago, she invited me to her new apartment for dinner. It's a modest but cozy place, decorated in a simple style I would have never associated with my sister before. This is the first time I've lived completely on my own, she confessed as we washed the dishes together after dinner. And you know what? I like it. It makes me feel capable, independent. The financial consequences she had so feared ironically became her path to a more authentic and satisfying life. She no longer boasts about luxuries on social media, or constantly competes for external approval. Instead, she's learning to value herself without needing to compare herself to others, especially me. My parents have also evolved after the initial crisis, making decisions that surprised me. Dad took early retirement from his stressful job, and now dedicates his time to teaching woodworking at a community center, something he had always wanted to do. Mom has become more independent and assertive. She even started a small baking business that's having moderate but steady success. The trip to Hawaii that sparked the whole conflict never happened, but something better took its place. For Christmas, I organized a family gathering in a cabin in the mountains. Nothing fancy, but with everything needed to genuinely reconnect. A fireplace, board games, long walks in the snow, and honest conversations late into the night. Jennifer arrived with some apprehension, clearly nervous about how she would be received by the rest of the family. To my surprise, it was Mom who greeted her with a warm hug and words of encouragement. "We're all learning and growing," she told her. "This Christmas is about a new beginning." During that vacation, we had conversations we would have considered impossible a year ago. We talked about old wounds, damaging patterns, and unspoken expectations. There were tears, some heated discussions, but also laughter and moments of authentic connection we hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. One night, while everyone else was asleep, Jennifer and I stayed up in front of the fireplace, sharing a bottle of wine and childhood memories. "You know what's most ironic?" she said, looking at the embers. "I always thought I needed all those external things, the perfect house, the successful husband, the luxury vacation to be happy. And now that I've lost all that, I feel more at peace than ever." "You haven't lost everything," I reminded her. "You have us, your family." She looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. "After how I treated you, how we excluded you from the trip. How can you forgive me so easily?" "It hasn't been easy," I admitted. "And forgiveness is a process, not an event. We're still on the path." My parents' acceptance of my job with my uncle Roberto has been another positive surprise. Initially, I feared they would see my professional success as another reason to compare Jennifer and me, perpetuating the sibling conflict. Instead, they've shown a genuine interest in my career, celebrating my achievements without feeling the need to mention her in every conversation. As for me, the experience of confronting my family and setting clear boundaries has transformed me profoundly. I'm no longer the person who bows her head and accepts any treatment just to keep the peace. I've learned that true love includes mutual respect, and that sometimes the most difficult confrontations are precisely the ones that lead to the healthiest relationships. Last week, Jennifer surprised me with an unexpected visit to my office. She brought a small package wrapped in simple paper. "It's a belated birthday gift," she explained. "I know it doesn't replace the trip we excluded you from, but inside was a delicate silver frame with a photo of the two of us when we were little, hugging and smiling, before competition and jealousy poisoned our relationship." Next to the photo was a card that simply read, "To my sister, my first friend and my best teacher. Thank you for not giving up on me." This small gesture confirmed what I was already beginning to believe, that from the ashes of our worst family crisis, the possibility of more authentic and satisfying relationships had emerged. I don't know what the future holds for Jennifer and me, or for our family in general. The road to full reconciliation is long, and will surely have its setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, I feel genuine hope. The family exclusion that hurt me so much has transformed into a deeper, more meaningful inclusion. The financial consequences we feared became opportunities for personal growth, and the sibling conflict that seemed irreconcilable has, paradoxically, led us to know and respect each other better as adults. Sometimes I think about that crucial moment when I decided to serve the eviction notice. It was an act of courage that changed the course of our lives. It wasn't revenge as Jennifer initially feared, but a necessary boundary that, though painful, forced us all to face uncomfortable truths and grow from them. As my grandmother once said, sometimes we need to lose what we think we want to find what we truly need. My family lost the appearances, the unearned privileges, and the toxic dynamics, but we found something much more valuable: authenticity, mutual respect, and the chance to love each other as we are. Imperfect but genuine. And that, in the end, is worth more than any trip to Hawaii.